Chicago, 1931. A city ruled by fear and crime. At the center of it all stood Al Capone, a man whose influence touched every corner of the city, from the politicians in City Hall to the police on the streets. For years, Capone seemed untouchable, his crimes hidden behind bribes and violence. But one man, Special Agent Eliot Ness, was determined to bring him down. Armed with determination, an unshakable team, and an unexpected weapon, Ness would take on America's most infamous crime boss in a way no one saw coming. Al Capone wasn't just a gangster. He was a king. By the 1920s, he controlled a sprawling empire of bootlegging operations, gambling dens, and illicit businesses during Prohibition. It's estimated he made over $100 million annually. Over $1.5 billion in today's money. But Capone wasn't just about business. He ruled Chicago with violence. Rival gangs? Eliminated. Police officers? Bribed. He was untouchable. His most infamous act was the 1929 Valentine's Day Massacre. 7 members of a rival gang were lined up in a warehouse and executed. The crime shocked the nation, but Capone walked away unscathed, his name never formally linked to the murders. While Capone basked in his untouchable status, the government had other plans. Enter Eliot Ness, a 27-year-old Prohibition agent. Ness wasn't interested in Capone's killings. He went after his wallet. Ness assembled a team of agents who couldn't be bribed, later known as the Untouchables. Their mission? To dismantle Capone's bootlegging network and uncover the financial records that would expose his crimes. Capone's biggest vulnerability wasn't his gang or his guns. It was his finances. Ness and his team began raiding breweries and speakeasies, cutting into Capone's profits. Each raid cost Capone millions and brought Ness closer to uncovering the financial records they needed. It wasn't easy. Ness received death threats, his family was targeted, and Capone's men watched his every move. But Ness refused to back down. His determination paid off when his team discovered ledgers detailing Capone's illegal operations. While Ness dismantled Capone's bootlegging empire, the IRS began its own investigation. They discovered Capone hadn't paid taxes on his immense wealth. Frank Wilson, a forensic accountant, played a crucial role in tracing Capone's income back to his criminal activities. The ledgers found by Ness's team became critical evidence in building the tax evasion case. A breakthrough came when Capone's own bookkeeper agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. In 1931, Al Capone was charged, not with murder or bootlegging, but with tax evasion. It was a surprising charge for a man with such a violent reputation, but the evidence was damning. Capone tried to bribe the jury, but the judge swapped out the jurors at the last minute, thwarting his plans. After a dramatic trial, Capone was convicted on 5 counts of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Capone's empire crumbled. He was sent to Alcatraz, where his health deteriorated due to syphilis. By the time he was released in 1939, he was no longer the powerful figure who once ruled Chicago. He died in 1947, a shadow of his former self. Capone's conviction sent shockwaves through Chicago. His once dominant criminal empire began to fracture as rival gangs and even former associates scrambled to fill the power vacuum. Without their leader, Capone's network lacked the cohesion and ruthlessness that had once made it so fearsome. The FBI, emboldened by their success, used the Capone case as a model for future organized crime investigations. It became clear that targeting criminals through their financial records, rather than their violent activities, was often the most effective strategy. But Capone's downfall didn't just impact his gang. It marked a turning point in American law enforcement, signaling the rise of federal agencies like the FBI and the IRS in combating organized crime. Capone's time in Alcatraz, one of the most infamous prisons in the world, was far from the life of luxury he had enjoyed as a crime boss. The isolation of the island prison and the regimented lifestyle took a toll on his health and psyche. The syphilis that had gone untreated for years began to severely affect his mental faculties, leaving him disoriented and withdrawn. By the time of his release in 1939, he was no longer the calculating, charismatic leader who had ruled Chicago with an iron fist. Instead, he lived out his final years in relative obscurity, suffering from dementia and the lingering effects of his illness. Al Capone's story didn't end with his death in 1947. His name became synonymous with the golden age of organized crime, immortalized in films, books, and pop culture. From The Untouchables to countless gangster films, Capone's larger-than-life persona has continued to captivate audiences. But Capone's legacy is also a cautionary tale. He epitomized the unchecked greed and corruption of Prohibition-era America, a time when organized crime flourished due to restrictive laws and widespread bribery. His life and downfall highlight the darker side of the American dream, a man who rose to the top through sheer ruthlessness, only to lose it all due to hubris and the relentless pursuit of justice. Even today, law enforcement agencies study the Capone case as a textbook example of how to bring down powerful criminal enterprises. The combination of forensic accounting, unrelenting investigators, and strategic prosecutions became the blueprint for dismantling organized crime syndicates across the world. Al Capone was more than a gangster. He was a symbol of an era. His story reminds us that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. From the violence of the streets to the quiet halls of the courtroom, Capone's legacy is a stark reminder of what happens when greed, power, and crime collide. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of dark history and hidden wealth, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time on Dark Hidden Wealth.